time.
It's a long time, and it's scary.
Right.
It's very scary. One thing I worry about with the odds ratios from the Virginia Tech study and some of the other studies that have come out over the last couple of years is we do not see an increase in accident collisions in the U.S. at this point to keep up with this phenomenon. So somehow, in many ways, we're balancing some of these demands. VMT, obviously, over the past year is down. Some of that's really the economy. Accidents down slightly as well. But there's something weird and strange going on, per se. Accidents are not increasing at the exponential rate of text messages. And it is very apparent from the literature and the research on that hand, but that the culmination of visual, manipulative, and cognitive demands of texting while you're driving is dangerous. So as you pointed out, the feeling of it's not going to happen to me and the risk associated there is intriguing because overall accident rates are slightly down.
Right, but do you think, Brian, that is not so much a matter of anything but perhaps the people who are involved in accidents would not say that they were texting or speaking on the phone, or it's not being filed with the police report?
That's accident rates overall.
Okay, so this is all accidents you're talking about.
Accidents.
Overall accidents are down, death and injury is down, and yet it's not because we're doing anything as a state or as a nation from the idea of enforcement or education that's unusually big to make them to go down. It's really miles driven based on the economy, I think, more than anything.
And look, the car is far safer today than it was 5 years ago, 10 years ago, and surely 30 years ago. But we're doing more, and we don't see the effect of all this on our daily life. Although we see newspaper clippings, we see and we feel it can't happen to me. The effect is there, the risk is real, but we don't perceive it.
Right. Well, let's talk about some hard facts in regards to, crashes and things like that, particularly with cell phone use and speaking and texting. Between 2003 and 2008, there were 5 fatal crashes caused by cell phone use in the state of New Hampshire. And that means that the investigating officer proved the crash took place between the perpetrating operator, because the perpetrating operator was using their cell phone at the time of the crash and was distracted. And that's 5 lives. 8 to 11% of fatal crashes per year are caused by general distraction, meaning that the officer determines that the operator was distracted, but there's no other specific cause of the distraction cited. And in New Hampshire, there are between 120 and 160 fatal crashes per year. So there are a lot of crashes, even though we may say, well, the accident rate hasn't gone up. We're still looking at lives and looking at injuries and things due to crashes, whether or not we like to say the number has gone up or down. There's still that reality.
The reality is that on average in New Hampshire we lose 129 people every year. That's the average if you look at the last 5 or 6 years. We're well below that this year, 20–25% below that. And I think, again, because of the economy and people driving less. But the reality is until that number becomes the number 1, meaning somebody who is near and dear to you, your child, your parent, your spouse, until they're injured or until they're killed, people just don't make it. It just doesn't seem real. In part because
we get away with it so often.
Well, that's exactly what I was going to say. In part because we drive mile after mile after mile after mile, speeding, driving impaired, driving too tired, driving while texting or on the cell phone, and we don't get the ticket. We're not in the crash. We don't sense that we're in trouble, and therefore it reinforces that it's okay to do it.
Exactly, and we feel we got away with it. We were okay. I've driven for miles and miles and miles and done this. Well, it doesn't make the risks any less. The risks are real.
But in the universe of distracted driving, isn't texting the worst of all behaviors just about? Because it is, I mean, you can eat a Big Mac and keep your eye on the road. You can...
Can you?
Not so sure.
But I'm saying these are not good behaviors. You see people putting on makeup, you see people drinking their coffee. But texting, because it requires your attention on a small device, doesn't the research show that is one of the more?
From a pure population standpoint, absolutely. From a certain instance, no. I sat in the car this morning on the way to work watch a person with a newspaper in front of the road, in front of them driving, block the whole windshield.
I see that all the time.
But obviously the percentage of time you see that is here. The percentage of people text messaging, as we quoted the statistics earlier, is increasing at an explosive level.
It's a cultural phenomenon.
It's a cultural phenomenon.
And that's why.
And a social phenomenon.
We put a specific bill in, because we've had a distracted driving bill on the books for years, but it felt it was necessary to put one specifically for texting because it's so inherently dangerous, and it is a cultural phenomenon. It is every single phone has the capability of doing it now.
Will you talk a little bit about the distracted driving law? Because I think there's been a lot of press on the texting ban, which is going into effect, where a lot of people don't even realize that, you know, in the state of New Hampshire, there's no law that says you can't talk on your phone, but if you're distracted as a result, you can get pulled over by a police officer.
Right.
And what are some of the repercussions for that? What are some of the fines, or do you know?
It's treated as a violation as well. It's distracted driving, and it's considered to be driving recklessly as a result. But again, harder to prove maybe with other behaviors. With texting, it seems that the police officers testified that the attention of the texter is off the road for so long, the car is moving so erratically that even they try to pull them over. One police officer said, I know the person is texting because I got behind the person and they didn't see me. I pulled up next to them and they didn't see me. I put my blue lights on and they didn't see me. Then I put my siren on and they saw me.
Right, absolutely. Now, from the standpoint of a lawyer, because David is a lawyer here with us tonight, if a person was texting or talking on the cell phone and being distracted while they were driving and hurt somebody or potentially killed somebody, wouldn't the repercussions be much worse because they were already doing an illegal behavior?
That's difficult to say. I mean, it certainly would contribute to the investigation. By the way, in New Hampshire, they can't look at your phone records unless it is part of a criminal investigation.
Right.
You're still protected. Your privacy rights are still protected. There's a law that says you can't text while you're driving, but to prove that would require to go into the phone records, I should say, would take a criminal.
One of the things that increasingly bothers me is the studies are showing that the frequency of crashes when somebody is texting or using the cell phone is now equal to the frequency of crashes when somebody has a 0.08 blood alcohol level. That's significant because impaired driving represents about 41% of all crashes, therefore all injury and death. And yet, if you kill somebody while driving impaired, you can easily do 7.5 to 15 years or so in state prison. It's not uncommon for a crash that is the result of somebody driving distracted to not face criminal charges. And there was one that was in the newspaper recently, I don't recall the names, and that's probably good right now, but the idea of the vehicle being on the wrong side of the road for X number of seconds and the fatal crash happened, but because nobody could prove why this person was on the wrong side of the road, it never met with criminal punishment. There was another case in Chicago, heavy construction, clearly marked, be ready for stop traffic. And the driver of a tractor trailer reaches down and he plugs in his cell phone charger, causes a crash that killed 7 people, including a young couple from New Hampshire. And he never faced criminal charges because the judge said what you did was typical of day-to-day human behavior. And therefore, I'm not going to pursue that as charges. I don't think that as a society, at least within the legal system, and perhaps even with the total society, we don't think of distracted driving as being as real and as serious as driving while impaired.
So we think it's like a reasonable person standard, and when we're talking about drinking and driving, obviously it's a completely different cat, in other words. I think I know that the study that you were referring to, they did do a couple of studies. The one that I found was by Car and Driver magazine, which was published in late June, and that demonstrated that texting while driving can be even more dangerous than drinking while driving.